Okay, all right.
Ron Howard is one of those directors that is pretty much the crème de la crème of Hollywood. Starting his career as a child actor, he already gained national attention for playing young Opie Taylor, the son of Sheriff Andy Taylor, in the Andy Griffith Show from 1960 through 1968. During this time, he also appeared in the musical film The Music Man in 1962, a critical and commercial success. This early success even led him to working in 1973 in one of the lead roles in the coming-of-age film American Graffiti, which was directed by George Lucas before Star Wars was a thing and produced by Francis Ford Coppola. So, needless to say, he was already part of the Hollywood elite since he was a young man. This role actually led him to getting cast as Richie Cunningham in the very popular sitcom Happy Days, playing the likable, button-down boy in contrast to Henry Winkler's greaser Arthur Fonzarelli. On the Happy Days set, he developed an on and off-screen chemistry with series leads Winkler and Tom Bosley. The three remained friends until Bosley's death in October 2010. However, even though the show was extremely popular, Howard left Happy Days just before the start of its 8th season in 1980 when he was offered a contract to direct television movies for NBC, an arrangement that required Howard to remain exclusive with the network for 1 year. Howard returned to the show for a guest appearance during its 11th and final season in November 1983 to allow a proper send-off for Richie Cunningham, whose absence had been explained by having him join the US Army and getting shipped off to Greenland. However, Howard also returned for the series finale in May 1984, the latter marking one of his last acting roles. Having somewhat completely left the acting biz, he decided to focus on directing, which made him the household director that he is known for. This video will look back at Ron Howard's career as a director throughout his early years until the late 80s. Obviously, taking an in-depth look at each of his movies would make this video super long, so I'll primarily focus on the movies that mostly touched me, that I feel were his career highlights. Before leaving Happy Days in 1980, Howard made his directing debut with the 1977 low-budget comedy action film Grand Theft Auto, based on a script he co-wrote with his father, Rance. This came after cutting a deal with Roger Corman, wherein Corman let Howard direct a film in exchange for Howard starring in Eat My Dust with Christopher Norris. Howard went on to direct several TV movies for NBC between 1978 and 1982, including the 1982 TV movie Skyward, but his big directorial break came in 1982 with Night Shift featuring Michael Keaton, Shelley Long, and Henry Winkler. In this movie, we follow Charles Chuck Lumley, played by Winkler, who was formerly a successful stockbroker and has found refuge from the ulcer-inducing Wall Street rat race in his job as an attendant at the New York City morgue. His displeasure at being promoted to night shift supervisor to make room for his boss's nephew Leonard is exacerbated by the irrational exuberance of Blaze, his new co-worker. His life takes a bizarre turn when a prostitute neighbor complains about the loss of her pimp. From this knowledge, Billy sprouts the idea that he and Chuck in their unsupervised state should act as pimps, or what Billy calls love brokers, for Belinda and her friends during their night shift at the morgue. Chuck eventually agrees, if only because of his affection for Belinda, but he expands on that idea into a full-fledged pseudo-legitimate business for all their collective benefit. The question becomes if this business is sustainable in light of the fact of everything about it being against Chuck's general nature, and if he will be able to balance his growing feelings for Belinda against having a personal relationship with a hooker. This film at the time was met with pretty positive reviews, mostly praising the performances of the two male leads, particularly Michael Keaton. This led him to direct Splash, which proved to be an enormously popular movie. Even though this movie was extremely successful upon release, getting made was another story. Brian Grazer, the producer of the film, had pitched Splash to numerous studios but was turned down repeatedly until Walt Disney Productions, then headed by Ron W. Miller, agreed to produce the film. The key to the proposal's success was that Grazer changed the premise description from the idea of a mermaid adjusting to life in New York City to that about a love story about an ordinary man in New York City meeting a mermaid. An issue at the time of production was the competition between Splash and another announced but unnamed mermaid film from Warner Brothers that had lined up Warren Beatty as its star. Director Ron Howard promised the studio that Splash would be filmed more quickly and cheaply than the other film, which eventually fell through. As for the movie Splash, it starts out with a young Alan Bauer who has a near-death experience in the waters of Cape Cod. Nearly 20 years later, he is now a successful businessman who finds himself in the same perplexing predicament. All what but alive, Alan returns home only to realize that his mysterious blonde savior, the innocent Madison, has followed him back to New York City, holding his wallet. Now unable to resist Madison's strange charm, Alan falls head over heels in love with her. But Madison is worried because she knows that she must go back to the sea soon, and also fears Alan's reaction if he finds out that she is a mermaid. Produced on an $11 million budget, it grossed $6.2 million in its opening weekend and finished its run with a gross of $69.8 million in the United States and Canada, making it the 10th highest grossing film of 1984. The following year, Howard released Cocoon, which is yet another iconic movie from the 80s. Originally, Robert Zemeckis was hired as a director for this film. He had even spent a year working on its development. At the time, Zemeckis was directing Romancing the Stone, another film for the same studio, 20th Century Fox. Fox executives previewed Romancing the Stone before its release in 1984 and hated it. That, in addition to his two previous directorial efforts, I Want to Hold Your Hand and Used Cars, both being commercial failures, led the studio to fire Zemeckis as the director of Cocoon, and he was replaced with Ron Howard. Cocoon is a movie about a group of aliens that return to Earth to retrieve cocoons containing the people they'd left behind from an earlier trip 10,000 years prior. These cocoons had been resting at the bottom of the ocean. Once retrieved, they stored them in the swimming pool of a house they'd rented in a small Florida town. Their mission is hampered by a number of elderly people from a nearby retirement community who had been secretly using the pool and who discovered unusual powers and a newfound youth from within these cocoons. The secret is soon revealed to everyone, which makes the other residents rush to the pool to swim in its waters. Art, Ben, Joe, and their friends soon discover that the cocoons belong to aliens named the Antarians, and as a result they want to help them return these cocoons back to their rightful owners. As a reward, the aliens offer to take residents of the retirement home with them to their home planet, where they will never grow older and never die. The film earned a couple of Academy Awards, and all of this success led to a sequel, Cocoon: The Return, which was released in 1988, in which almost all of the original cast reprised their roles, minus Ron Howard directing. Actually, Ron Howard refused to have any association with the sequel, feeling concerned that the whole point of the first film would immediately be squandered, and instead directed the 1988 epic fantasy movie Willow, which is one of my favorite Ron Howard films. This movie was conceived by George Lucas, who originally titled the movie Munchkins back in 1972. Similar in intent to Star Wars, he created a number of well-known mythological situations for a young audience. During the production of Return of the Jedi in 1982, Lucas approached Warwick Davis, who was portraying Wicket the Ewok, about playing Willow Ufgood. 5 years passed before he was actually cast in the role. Lucas thought it would be great to use a little person in a lead role. A lot of my movies are about a little guy against the system, and this was just a more literal interpretation of that idea. Production had to wait till the mid-1980s to make the film because visual effects technology was finally advanced enough to execute his vision. It's during this time period that they hired Ron Howard, who was looking to do a fantasy film. The movie Willow starts with a baby girl who's discovered in a river by Rhiannon and Mims, the children of Willow Ufgood, a dwarf farmer and magician, and the baby girl is taken into the care of Willow's family. But when a terrifying dog-like creature attacks Willow's village whilst tracking down the baby, the High Alderman gives Willow a task to give the baby girl to a responsible person. But Willow soon learns the baby is Alora Danan, the baby girl destined to bring about the downfall of the evil sorceress Queen Bavmorda. Joined by his allies Swordman Medmardigan, Sorceress Finn Raziel, and the brownies Frangine and Rule, Willow takes it upon himself to protect Alora from Queen Bavmorda, who intends to kill Alora and prevent Alora from fulfilling her destiny. Throughout his adventure, Willow and his allies are pursued by Queen Bavmorda's daughter Sorsha and the evil commander of Queen Bavmorda's army, General Kale, whom are searching for Alora in order to bring her back to Queen Bavmorda's castle, where she bids to kill the baby in a ritual to prevent her downfall prophecy. Principal photography for this movie began on April 2nd, 1987 and ended the following October. Interior footage took place at L Street Studios in England, while location shooting took place in Dinorwick Quarry, Wales, and New Zealand. The Chinese government refused Lucas the chance for brief location shoots, so he had to send a group of photographers to South China to photograph specific scenery, which was then used for background blue screen footage. Tongariro National Park in New Zealand was chosen to house Bavmorda's castle. The film was released in 1988 to mixed reviews from critics. It grossed $137.6 million worldwide against a $35 million budget. While not the blockbuster some expected, it turned a profit based on international box office returns and strong home video and television returns. Additionally, it received 2 Academy Award nominations and has created quite a cult following throughout the years. Because of this, a television series based on the film is in development and scheduled to be released on Disney Plus in 2022. In 1989, Ron Howard released Parenthood, where he assisted in developing the story with screenwriters Lowell Gantz and Babaloo Mandel. Much of it is based on the family and parenting experience of Howard, Gantz, Mandel, and producer Brian Grazer, who have at least 17 children among the 4 of them altogether. Parenthood tells the story of perfectionist Gil Bookman, played by Steve Martin, who is trying to balance his family and his career. When he finds out that his eldest son Kevin has emotional problems and needs therapy, and that his 2 younger children, Taylor and Justin, both have issues as well, he begins to blame himself and question his abilities as a father. When his wife Karen becomes pregnant with their 4th child, he's unsure he can handle it. Gil is also frustrated and fearful that the financial burdens of another child and office politics at work are turning him into the detached workaholic similar to his own father, which he despises. Gil's siblings only adding to the stress of his life. One of his sisters faces difficulty when her teenager daughter becomes pregnant. Another clashes with her husband when she asks for more children. Gil's immature brother turns up as well, with a young son he can barely handle. The film opened at number 1 in its opening weekend, earning $10 million. It eventually grossed over $100 million domestically and $126 million worldwide. The film was adapted into an NBC television series in 1990 and 2010. While the first series was cancelled after 1 season, the second series ran for 6 seasons. This was the final movie that he did in the 80s. Ron Howard is still going strong up to this day with over 47 directing credits to his name. This actually concludes the first part of my Ron Howard retrospective. In the next video, I'll look at his career throughout the 90s. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Leave me a comment too, and let me know what Howard film is your favorite. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.